Okay, welcome everyone to the Pro Trade Room Plus Amazon AMD earnings API report. My name is Lee Goldstein, Trading Director for 10-Minute Trades. Please remember all the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. It's possible to lose money trading futures, so trade carefully, please. Okay, everyone, let me know for sure that you can hear me just fine and that you can see the charts. Give me a heads up if you would, please. And I am streaming on YouTube. So the question is it working? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it right now because we want to spend the time on the trade. So just give me 30 seconds to see if it's working. Looks good. If anybody wants to go over there and check it out, let me know that you can hear. And I'm still not seeing the webcam. So very frustrating. I've got to figure out what the problem is. You should be able to see the webcam, but it's not showing up. Anyway, let's talk about the earnings because that's what I'm working on. It's very strange. It was working before. Okay, so we're dealing with Amazon first. And if we go through the history of Amazon, Amazon, more often than not, trades with other companies. And today, it's really not trading with other companies. Amazon is trading by itself. However, I mean, I did a deep, deep dive like I always do. And the reality is the setup should be the same or very close to what we've been doing. If we take a look at earnings whispers and we look at the calendar just to check all the companies that are releasing their earnings today, we've got Amazon at 4, AMD at 4:15, Pinterest, which used to be a company we had been interested in, but not today. It's just not viable. And really, that's the major, major, major reports that we're looking at today. So there's a ton of earnings, but we're not dealing with monstrous contamination compared to the type of movement that I expect from Amazon. So that's the good news. I expect a very normal earnings trade today. That doesn't mean it's going to be a profitable report. It just means that I don't expect anything out of the ordinary in terms of other companies screwing up the earnings by being in the way, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest issue that we face when we're dealing with a situation like today, where it's a little bit different, Amazon often trades with Intel. That's really the main trading partner when Amazon releases their earnings. Occasionally, you get a Google. Um, we've had a rare Facebook together, but I do anticipate that we should see our release time at the expected time that we would have if it was trading with Intel. I've never, in all the history, all the studying, going back years, I've never found an Amazon that releases before the time that we're going to put our orders on the chart. So I can't guarantee that Amazon won't release early, but I feel pretty comfortable that if we put our orders on the chart at the time that I'm expecting, then we should catch the earnings and it should be a good trade. That's what, of course, I'm looking for. So let's go over the setup so everybody understands how we're doing it. I do expect that Amazon will release very, very close to 4:01 Eastern Time. That's what I'm expecting. So we've got a strategy where I'm going to put the orders on the chart at 160047. Then I've got a break bracket of 75 ticks. And, it's really up to you how many contracts and what kind of targets you're going to look for. But I would look for anywhere between 29 and 150 ticks on this report for the earnings portion for the spike. And I'm using a stop of 65. And if it hits my first target, then I'm going to move my stop to break even, believe it or not, -3. I don't want my stop to be in the way of a change in direction. So if it hits the first target, that's usually a pretty good move. If it reverses to zero, then it'll stop me out. Otherwise, I'd like to try and hit the second and maybe even a third target. So 160047, I'll put the orders on the chart, and then targets can be anywhere between, literally anywhere between 20 ticks and 150. And the stop is 65. That's how I'm trading it. I've got the trade labeled, and then I always check the width of the brackets. And there's the brackets. It's been a pretty volatile day in the markets. The markets are negative, quite a lot of points at the moment. You never know how the close is going to go. So I always expect a volatile close, especially prior to a major earnings report. So I expect a volatile close. Right now, the market is manageable. It'd be great if it stays the way it is. And then, I mean, really, it's not a complicated setup. I'm expecting Amazon to release when they normally do. We will watch it on our Thinkorswim chart. We should see the news right here on the news feed. And then after Amazon, we'll take a short break and we'll set up our AMD trade. So our setup is pretty much ready to go. Triggering at 160047. 160047. Any questions? Anybody got any questions? My goal, I did something interesting. Over the course of 3 years, we've had 3 or 4 stops. And many of those stops were much earlier in the days that we were trading earnings. We were using much smaller brackets and much smaller stops. And I went back just because I just wanted to see what the story was and what the reality was if we might have traded those with a more current setup. And it was very interesting to see that if you traded with a more current setup, then it actually was a much better trade, even on some of the stop outs. A year ago or a year and a half ago, it was possible to rescue those reports. What I discovered and what is important is to try not to press the adjust button unless it's an absolute must. If you can survive the bracket, and I'm using a slightly bigger bracket so that we don't have to press the adjust button. Sometimes you can adjust yourself out of the trade, and you can ruin the trade by using the adjust button. If you happen to press it right as the orders are coming through, it can really screw up the brackets, make them too big. Okay, so that's why I'd prefer not to press the adjust button unless the market is so volatile when the orders go on the chart that you have no choice. If you have no choice, you could move your orders manually. Most people are not comfortable doing that. Okay. Um, so the adjust button is handy. And yes, 160047 is when I'm putting the orders on the chart. I do expect, I expect the earnings to come out at 4:01 and 5 or 6 seconds. So last quarter, they were on time. The quarter before, they were 4:01, 8/3, they were 4:01, April 27th, 4:01, February 2nd, 4:01:05, 10/27, 4:01, 7/28/01:05, 4/28/01, 2/3/22, they were 03, 10/28/21, they were 01. And then I went back and did a deeper dive and did that Amazon super stop setup. And what I discovered, and let me just get my notes, 2/2/23 it was 01:07, 7/28/22 it was 05, February 22 it was 01:04. But what's important? You got 01:04, 01:05, 01:07. Almost every single Amazon event is just oh 01 and a few seconds. So look, they could screw us up. They could take a lot of extra time and not release the earnings. They could release them 5 minutes late. But that's not what we anticipate. We anticipate a very normal behavior from Amazon. Let's take a look at last quarter. So if we look at February and we go to 4 o'clock and a few seconds, okay, I can only get like 45 seconds before. So the market was almost somewhat similar in points to what it is today. It was up 180, and the market was volatile but not out of control in February. And our orders went on the chart at 47-ish. And we did not have to press the adjust button. And boom, it went up, pulled back, and took us out. It hit target one plus just a couple of ticks on target two. That's how the party goes sometimes. Sometimes it hits your target, your first target, and pulls back, and then it keeps going. And you just don't have a lot of, you have choices you can make. You can not move your stop if you want to. You can move your stop to break even -10. There's a lot of different ways you could try to prevent that from happening. But, there's a moderate amount of risk on this report because the stop is big. You have a 65 tick stop. So if you hit a target, do you really want to give all of those 65 ticks back, especially if your target is only 30 ticks? Because it would be a loser if you hit your first target. So one of the things you're wrestling with is how to manage the stop if it hits a target. I usually, probably almost always, on most of my trades, I like to protect the target of profit, especially with a big earnings report, because you might be risking $1,000 on the report. If you're trading three, four, or five contracts, you're risking much more than 1,000. So everybody likes to deal with their stop in a different way. This was October. October, the market was a bit more volatile. We got a good explosion, and it didn't quite get to that second target, but still, there was quite a lot of profit on that trade because we were able to trail that second target and get a big part of that second target. So that was a very nice, profitable trade, also. Now, look, I don't want to scare anyone, but I think it's not a terrible idea to just look at a bad report. And back in April, we had a bad report, and it just did a whipsaw without anything even taking place other than an instant whip and an instant stop. And any trade could not work out. You have to just be a grown up about it. If it happens, the trade could end, you could lose money, and it's over. Then we're going to go trade AMD. And we'll talk about AMD right now after we look at this one trade. AMD presents much more in the way of challenges. But this was just an Amazon earnings trade that just didn't work. We put our orders on, similar time. Let me see if I can get the right spot here. All right, have to wait. Um, we put our orders on exactly the right time. We didn't do anything wrong. The market just didn't cooperate. Um, David, you get your occasional whipsaws, but not not an exorbitant number of them, I don't think. I think sometimes in the morning earnings, the smaller ones tend to be a little bit whippier. And then it also depends. I mean, Google is whippier, Tesla is whippier. That trade just didn't work. It was just an instant failure. You couldn't even see it with the naked eye. And sometimes that happens. And, everybody's been here. Most everybody's been here long enough to see good trades, terrible trades, the whole gamut of everything. And then I'll show you one more Amazon. And let me talk about AMD. AMD definitely has inconsistency. We've had multiple quarters where they just, for whatever reason, they release their earnings early or seem to. In the old days, we did not have a good way of knowing whether or not 100% the earnings were released. Now we don't have that issue. Now we know almost always exactly when the earnings are released. Sometimes it's delayed by a second or two, but we don't have confusion over whether or not earnings are out. And we did go through that for years where you could not always tell. Sometimes you'd get a big move, it looked like the earnings, and it wasn't. And AMD is very guilty of that kind of behavior. They've had multiple quarters where it really seemed like the earnings came out at 405 even though they were scheduled for 415. Now in retrospect, obviously studying, we have more tools. We won't have to worry. We will know when those earnings are out because I'll show you in 1 second. This was one more Amazon. This was back in February. Same time with the orders. Hit the adjust button there. Did we adjust our way out of that trade? Yeah, we did. That's why I don't want to hit the adjust button. If you can avoid it, you might be able to catch the trade in the right direction and hit your first target. Now, that was a trade that I already showed you. This was August of 23. But I'm going to try to avoid the adjust button, depending on the volatility in the market. What we want to see is a nice big burst. We don't care if it's up, down, or sideways. We just want the burst. All right. So one more time, we'll check our brackets. And then AMD, I have a setup that I trust, but it is possible. It's absolutely possible that they could release their earnings early. They have had some inconsistency. I do believe that it wasn't so much that their earnings were early as more of an issue that we were not sure the earnings were out because it was in the older days when we were doing earnings and we had less tools at our disposal. So right now, the bracket is pretty manageable. Just watching to give you a feel. And we're going to be as volatile as it is now, even more if the market gets busier for the close. So we'll put our orders on at 160047. 160047. The bracket 75 targets anywhere between 20 and 150 with a stop of 65. The earnings are scheduled for 4 o'clock, Arthur, and they come out almost always at 4:01 and a couple of seconds. Almost always. You can see the market is volatile, which is not abnormal at the close. Okay? We've had 1% movements in some of the big tech stocks before the earnings have come out. I believe it was Meta that at one earnings had a move that was as big as 1%. I'm not showing the AMD settings again until after Amazon. Sorry, we're too close to the trade. I want to watch the markets. There'll be plenty of time to go over the settings. AMD is 1614. I can tell you what they're going to be. It's going to be 1614 and 57-ish in that time period. The bracket, it's only going to be about a 30 tick bracket. And if the market is not tradable, I'll pass on AMD because AMD has been filled with inconsistencies. Now, the market is very volatile, everyone. Very volatile. If we don't get a calm down, there have been times when we haven't traded. There are times when it gets too volatile to trade. This is pretty active. It's pretty active. Let's hope it calms down a little bit. And then targets on AMD, I'll probably only use targets of about 20 and 40, 45 ticks. So just watching the markets, just watching the markets. Like I said, there's a lot of activity. Everyone should have checked their time sync. Check your time sync. Go to the website time.is. And what I expect is that our orders will go on the chart around 47, and the earnings will come out very close to 0105. I'd be surprised if they go much longer. Like I said, we had an '07, we had an '01, we had an '05 on the various quarters. So we should get earnings pretty quick. Now, maybe we're putting our orders on too early. It's possible. It's possible. But we're giving the market, almost 45 seconds to calm down. That's not a lot of time. I don't cancel earning trades, Ravi. Um, I just wait for it to fill. So there would not be really a reason to cancel it unless it went 3 minutes. We will know if the earnings come out because they'll show up. See where the cursor's moving? That's the news feed on Thinkorswim. And that will tell us when the earnings are out. So if, for instance, the earnings came out and there was zero movement, um, I would consider canceling. We've never had a cancellation on an earnings trade. I wouldn't say that. I've missed some trades um, where I didn't get filled, where I've done some things where it got over adjusted. But generally, most of the times in an earning trade, you're not going to say like, okay, if it doesn't fill in 10 seconds, I'm going to cancel it because you don't know for sure exactly what time they'll release the earnings. In general, I don't like to auto cancel. I find in the old days, years ago, it was a more valid feature. But the pandemic really changed a lot of the canceling. All right, so the market's really selling off at the close. Wow. Does that mean Amazon's earnings are going to be bad? Not necessarily. So here's the close, and I'd certainly like to see the market get calmer. Our orders won't go on until 47. Okay, there's our orders. So I closed that trade, and I missed the trade probably. I had to close that trade, folks, because I got filled early and I couldn't stop it. And I think I lost about $80. I'm not even sure. I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to look. I think I lost like $40. There was nothing I could do. I did not want to be in the trade early because I got filled early before the earnings came out. It was just too much darn volatility. Too much volatility. It was too big. And a very kind of choppy move also. Very choppy. Difficult Amazon trade. Difficult. And I think I was up three. I was up, I think 317. I'm up 302. Um, there wasn't much I could do. I did not want to get filled early and wait because then it's just a coin toss. I'd rather cancel. I tried to get back in, but it was too late. I saw that price had moved. So I'm done with Amazon. I'm not going to try and catch another trade because I'll see if we can get AMD. There still could be a trade with AMD. And I hope, I don't know what happened to everyone else. Tell us what happened. If you stayed in, if you canceled, if you got filled. I did not press the adjust button right at the last minute. I'm not sure this could have been a winning trade no matter what. It just was not a good move. So I'm not really sure this could have been a winner no matter what you did. I really don't think it was. Because look at the move. We have a whipsaw candle here. It's not a giant mover. So I'm going to go. Let's go. If you want to continue, I'm interested still. I'll take a shot with AMD. If we get what I expect from AMD, there's an opportunity for profit. I'll take the shot. I think I got lucky with Amazon as it did not cost me very much money. The only thing I could say is I thought I would actually make about $100. I was up about 100 when I canceled, and we'll go over the videos when everything is over, okay? But I don't want to. We don't have a ton of time, and I want to spend a little bit of time on AMD. Blew an evaluation account, Doc. Was it? I mean, was it? How big of a loss was it? How big of a loss was it? It was just a bad move. It's the risk we take when we trade these types of reports. There's not, sometimes you just get stuck. I mean, there hasn't been a bad Amazon trade since a year ago. Our last bad trade was in April. It was a year ago. Um, and it's just frustrating. They can't all win, and it's totally frustrating. AMD. Let's talk about AMD. If they release early, they release now at 5 after. I will not trade it if they release early. I've got 16, 14, 55. I'll put my orders on the chart. It shouldn't be nearly as volatile. A 28 bracket, I'm going to go right now for a 30 even bracket. Targets anywhere between 20 and 80, 20 and 80, and I'm risking a stop of 40, okay? Risking a stop of 40. I don't expect AMD to move nearly as much as an Amazon or the other companies, the big techs. They just don't seem to. If it hits my first target, I'll move my stop to break even -5. And that's how I'm going to trade AMD. I'm going to test my brackets. And don't run out when we're done. We'll go through the video. I think it's clear what happened. We just didn't get a stable move on the earnings. I mean, sometimes it's very obvious what happened. Now, look, was it related to this incredible sell-off that we had before before the close? You could say maybe, you don't know. Now, the markets, because of all this wacky volatility, the charts are going to look a little weird because I want a bracket that I can trade. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? I want a bracket that I could trade. Now, this is extreme volatility, everybody. Extreme volatility. So if you don't feel comfortable trading, do not. Do not. You could see that. And the concern about AMD for me is that you're going to get filled. You might get filled like that, right? I got filled just testing my brackets. So this is extreme volatility. I don't think we can make too much money if we go to a 40 bracket, but I'm going to go to a 40 bracket, um, thinking that it's so volatile that maybe we'll get that much more of a move out of AMD. But folks, keep in mind, this is high risk. You know, the volatility may not be tradable. We've got 8 minutes. There's a whole lot of earnings coming out right now. It just may not be tradable. So at the moment, I'm not on live charts at the moment. My charts are not on live. I'm just watching and I'm putting in sim my bracket on because I want to get a feel for whether or not this is tradable. Okay. And you can do that by putting your charts in sim and putting the brackets on. Now we've increased the brackets. Now, a couple of techniques. You could sit with your finger on the enabled button and you could turn the trade off and on. Okay. That's one method. Or you could use the adjust button. Okay. You can use the adjust button and it could adjust you out of the trade. It's possible. But I think 5 minutes from now, I think it should get a little bit quieter. I'll probably take the shot if it looks possible. 16, 14, 55. I'm using a 40 bracket, targets of 24 and 69 with a stop of 40. That's what I'm willing to risk. And if it just looks too volatile at the moment of the event, you can just take your trade off. You don't have to do it if you're not comfortable. Okay? You don't have to do it. Yeah, Starbucks released. I mean, they're not what they used to be, you know? So our orders are going to go on the chart at 16, 14, 55. Okay? The problem with AMD. So in October, 415.30 they released. 415.13 in January. 415.13 in January. 30 in October. Could not tell what time in August. 415.35 it looked like in May. 415.12 it looked like in January of 23. Uh, 415.56 in November of 22. 56. That's a lot of waiting time. That was pretty late. And then August of 22, I couldn't even tell when the earnings came out without being there. So that's what I mean about some inconsistency with AMD. So if it looks too volatile, keep your finger near the enabled button and just uncheck it before 415 if you don't want to trade it. Okay? If you don't want to trade it. And the MNQ, I'd probably use a 100 tick stop. I would probably, I mean, this is a trade that, look at the volatility. Sheesh. This is extreme. This is extreme. I really think it's extreme. I mean, I'm using a 40 bracket on the NQ, so I wouldn't go too much bigger because I don't think there's enough profit on AMD. That's the real issue. It's not, doesn't have a history of moving quite as much as the bigger tech stocks. I know that people think of AMD as a big tech stock, but its earnings have been strange, stranger. The real concern is managing the brackets before the news. That's the issue. I think most of us probably can't do it, myself included, maybe. It's very volatile, very volatile. If you go more than 40, there might not be much profit. So, Roz, I probably wouldn't trade it. I don't think I would trade it. Look at the action. I don't think it's tradable at the moment. I'm not going to trade it at the moment. It's too, it's not safe. I don't think it's safe. Now, I'm setting up a random reversal trade with a target of 50 ticks and a stop of 50 ticks. It's a $250 risk. I'm not sure I'll have any interest in doing it, but at the moment, folks, I don't think most of us should probably trade this. I just think it's too volatile. I may not trade it. I'm going to decide in a couple of seconds. It's too, I don't think I'll be able to keep my orders on the chart long enough. That's the reality. I'm not going to trade it, folks. I'm not going to trade it. I mean, right now it just got less volatile, but I think it's too difficult. I think there's a real possibility it could fill those brackets. You know, it's moving in points. It's not moving in ticks. That was a 2 point move. You know, I could put the orders on anytime I want now if I wanted to and try and catch the trade. There's the earnings. Now, if I would have had my trade on, it would have worked. It would have worked. But I'm not sure it was safe, folks. I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable. I was not comfortable. So I'm gonna just lick my small wounds from today. Watch it for a minute. Watch it for a minute. So those earnings came out. Um, it was after 4:15 by it looked like it was about 20 seconds maybe. I'll have to look in the video. That was tough. That was a tough. Um, I think, you know, I feel in some ways like a chicken. It did calm down for about 20 seconds before the earnings. It was not quite as volatile, but that's so difficult psychologically to put those orders on there. I just couldn't do it. I just could not do it. Because if I would have just pressed the enabled button, it would have put the brackets on, but I just did not feel comfortable. Now, on a sim, I would not be afraid to do it. Right? On a sim, I would have put my orders on in a second. But in live, I've got two contracts. It's a 600, almost a $600 loss. I did not want to take it after making money and not losing that much on the Amazon trade. I only lost a little bit on Amazon because I was able to cancel it when I got filled. So AMD, it looks like their earnings are negative. So we do have the API report. After going through this, I don't have that much interest in API, but we still have to do it. So I think in about 2 minutes at 4:20, I'll go over to API. So there's a lot of downward pressure on the market. I certainly don't like to chase from here. There was downward pressure way long ago. This is not, this is a place where if you're a new trader, you jump in short and you get your head handed to you. So I would not, I would have jumped in there, right? And you'd be ready to jump off a bridge because it's going against you. We've all seen that game, right? And being truthful, the psychology of using an eval account is much easier than a cash account. I would have found it easier to put the trade on in my eval account in a situation where I might not have been willing to put it on in my cash account. It is a different psychology trading prop accounts versus cash accounts. It doesn't mean um, it doesn't mean you're trading incorrectly. It just means the rules are different. The psychological rules are different. Larry, what did you actually trade? What did you actually trade? Oh, the AMD. You got your trade on. You got your trade on. We'll look at the video. It definitely, I think it calmed down about 20 seconds before AMD. And I saw it and I just didn't have the psychological guts to take it. That's the truth. I just didn't take it. All right, let's go over to API because that's our job. All right, so I have a different workspace for API. I need oil. I'm assuming we're still on 6 on oil. Let me get the news. And I'm going to close our stream. So thanks everybody that watched.